Oh, hey, everybody.
Hey.
We're doing a little Cinemando shortcut without Burke. We're Burkeless today, so it's just Kathy and I. I'm Mark.
Burkeless.
She's Kathy, yes.
That's right. And we're going to talk about Joe Berlinger's Times Square. What's the complete official title?
It's called Crime Scene, the Times Square Killer.
The Times Square Killer.
Yeah, this is the second in his series. The first one was Crime Scene, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, which was about a downtown Los Angeles.
So great.
So interesting and fascinating. And this one is his second one, which is a 3-episode series that focuses on New York City, Times Square in the 1970s for the Torso Killer. And it's, the first episode is less about, obviously it talks about the murder and the killings, and they're gruesome because there's a hotel fire and they find these 2 bodies and they're headless and handless.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's something they didn't expect to see when they walked in that room. They're like, oh, we'll see if anyone's in here. What?
Right. And
it's of course, clearly that was done so they wouldn't be identified. No dental records, no fingerprints.
Right. So this
he sort of got off on it also, but
he got off on it. He was actually smart, and he kind of just knew what he was doing. It seemed, when this happened, and this was the 1970s. The hotel was in Times Square, and back then, and they talk about it a lot, and they show you Times Square was not exactly the safest, prettiest place. It was pretty intense, and I lived there in the 80s, and I saw that back end of it. It's just like it's prostitution everywhere. I think in the 10 square blocks of what they consider Times Square, there was like 1,600 prostitutes a night walking, looking for action.
And there were live sex shows. There were like all these different variations on businesses that could produce porn, whether it's peep shows and,
porno,
whatever.
Theaters. Yeah.
Yes.
It was everything. And then it went into Plato's Retreat, which was a sex club where anything went. And then, it was just, it was basically where this was happening.
The good old days.
now it's like Disney East or something. So which one's worse? I think probably this one. But anyway, it's very gritty New York side, which is interesting to watch because you just go, wow, that's just a crazy time to have been living there. But of course, this murder was horrifying, and terrible. It put everybody on edge. And the 3 episodes, the first episode is about the first initial murder and the first couple of murders. The second, the investigation comes into play as to they're starting to figure out what's going on, what's the motives, will this guy make a mistake? And the third episode is about how they find him.
Yes. And spoilers, they find him.
Well, yeah, and it's a spoiler, I guess, but it's always fascinating to figure out how they do it. What's the break?
It is. It really is. Also, I have the trailer if we want to just take a peek at it. We don't necessarily have to look at the whole thing, but I wanted everybody to get a vibe because there's some beautiful footage, archival footage that it just really, I think that's what I like best about it was the whole 70s look to it.
The whole world is attracted to Times Square, but in the late 70s, Times Square was considered an atrocity.
That's just cool.
Yeah.
Firemen were responding to a report of a fire in a West Side hotel room. They found much more than they had anticipated.
It was the hotel room from hell.
You had the smell
There's some
from
reenactments.
burning flesh.
Yes.
The smoke was thick.
Good ones too.
They crawled
really
into
well
the
produced.
room, not being able to see.
I had covered crime, but I had never covered crime as salacious and as evil and as brutal.
What sick son of a bitch could do something like this?
He was great.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Times Square in the 70s did not help.
It was a place where you could fulfill forbidden fantasies in all sorts of different ways.
There were guys that were pure predators.
It was rampant crime on every block.
And we just kept learning about more killings and more killings.
My mother was taken in such a horrific manner.
The idea of having another serial killer out there again. Absolutely terrifying.
It's easier to arrest sex workers than to hunt a serial killer.
This guy, he gets off on the presentation, considers himself smarter than the police. You're dumb and you won't catch me. Well, you keep waiting, you asshole. We're going to catch you. We're talking about the psychology of evil.
I'm sure I was in the car with a serial killer.
The old Times Square ruined a lot of people's lives.
I just couldn't turn it off. It was so compelling.
It's really compelling. And what you get is like, for Berlinger knows like what he did with Cecil Hotel and what he does with Times Square. He talks about the environment of the killings.
Yes.
You know, Cecil Hotel is in the middle of Skid Row. So you learn about Skid Row, you learn about all the homeless the problems and how that came about. And here you learn about Times Square, how, you know, it used to be in the 20s and 30s and 40s. It was like, it was Broadway. It was where it was beautiful movie theaters and all that kind of stuff. And then it just went very seedy. And that's where the killer likes to come and sort of do his, you know, do his dirty work.
Exactly.
So,
and, you know, Joe's a good friend of ours. You know, we met him through the West Memphis 3 and Paradise Lost films. He did those documentaries for HBO. And now he basically was like the forerunner of almost like this true crime renaissance, even though I feel like he does more cinema verite. I think, you know, he's sort of going a little bit of a more high road on this stuff stylistically, but he was way ahead of the curve on this. You know, before this was even a thing. But his what I do like about his documentaries, you do feel like you're in the space about where this was happening. And I do, you know, like you said, even the Cecil Hotel, like they had a lot of background on Skid Row, and even in Paradise Lost, you got to see like a lot of people meet them in their homes and in their, you know, towns. And it really was fascinating just to see the environment where these things happen. And also in a way, it sort of tries to sort of give a context of why it could have happened. And partly in this was because, you know, prostitutes were afraid of the police because they're afraid they'd be arrested. So they didn't turn anybody in who was doing, you know, dicey things because they just didn't trust the police. So that was another reason this guy probably got away for as long as he did.
And he also had this scam at work where he worked not too far from Times Square, and he could just sort of do something with the computer, punch out and go and do stuff and come back, and he had an alibi. But some of his coworkers had a different idea. So it's really compelling. I think 3 episodes is the perfect amount for this story.
So good. Yeah, it didn't feel padded. It felt really interesting. Yeah.
And the
talked
interviews,
actually also to a victim who got away. And
Yes.
that was really interesting. You know, that was just, you know, knowing what the guy was up to. I mean, that was just it just sounds horrifying.
and the interviews are really I love the mix of the interviews and sort of the actual footage. Like it's the right amount of interviews. The interviewees are compelling, interesting, a lot of really classic New Yorkers, some of them. And so it's just a great series. You can crank through it pretty quick. It's very addicting. And so I watched it in one sitting. So for me, it was just one night of viewing, and
you almost can't stop. You're like, I'll just watch a little bit more. I'll just watch a little bit more. And it's just, it's just a really well produced story about a killer I don't think a lot of people have heard of, and I wasn't quite aware of, like, whether he was even caught or what was happening to him, and and it has like a really creepy ending, updates on him, and yeah, I would say definitely if you're into true crime or even just like documentaries that are well made, it's definitely worth checking out.
Absolutely. I agree. Crime Scene, The Times Square Killer on Netflix by Joe Berlinger, who always
Joe's the best.
Quality stuff. So a big, we really liked it, and maybe we'll get Joe on to talk more about it sometime.
That would be great.
That'd be wonderful. All right, everybody.
All right,
thanks for checking out.
Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.